All right, peace, peace. Or Hotep, ETM Hotep. I know it's late, and I always appreciate anybody who tunes into my live streams on Facebook Live, because I will definitely come out of the clear blue sky unannounced and do these live streams. And so this is no different. But this is going to be a quick one. I want to, as the title says, the question is, what is reparation or reparations? And so I want to just do this video to explain it, because in all of the conversation, in case you haven't noticed lately, the hot topic or what's trending right now is ADOS and all of the different conversations around it. Okay, ADOS, you think of ADOS, you think of reparations, and then you hear about all of the divisive, adversarial fussing and things, the back and forth that's been going on about ADOS. And so there's a lot of things that are being misconstrued and everything. So it's one particular issue that I wanted to talk about in this video. And hopefully I'm doing it because I want to hopefully help people out to be able to understand it. Because in my in my experience, what I'm seeing in the conversations is a lot of misunderstanding. And it could be because of ignorance, just not knowing, or if it caters to emotion. A lot of people are being emotional about certain issues, and ignoring the truthfulness of any particular issue. They just don't like it. Okay, and then they're being very vocal about it. All right, so and there's quite a few issues that are going back and forth. But anyway, I wanted to explain reparation, okay, and just help people out who may not know what it is exactly. They've heard of it before. We all hear the word reparations, but some people may not have looked into it. So just want to take some time out to explain it, and hopefully this video be archived, of course, on Facebook. And as a matter of fact, let me cut that. Okay, so it's going to be archived on Facebook for those who are not hanging out with me right now. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. So again, ETM Hotep, which is welcome and peace to everyone, and I appreciate anyone who's tuned in. All right, so I just want to quickly go over reparations. All right, and if you have any comments or questions for me based on what I explained, then by all means type them into the chat. I can see the chat, but I won't really dig into any comments until after I explain this first. All right. Okay. So, well, first of all, if anyone who's watching right now, if you can let me know that you can hear me clear, please let me know that first before I continue forward. All right. And I know there's a gap of time, so I will wait and continue to run my mouth until I see some kind of confirmation that I could be heard. I would do a roll call. I see Sonet Monica, Brother Nguvu, Hotep Abdul Latif, Sonet Lisa, Brother Amir, Brother Kim, Khafab Menefer. Okay, you can hear me. All right, that's good. So let me just jump into it, all right, because I know it is late and this is out of the clear blue ocean. Okay, so what is reparation? Okay, as you can see, you all can read along with me. I'm just going to read it, and it's pretty straightforward, but I want to save everybody else some time by providing you this information. But I especially encourage everyone to look it up yourself, okay? All right, because I could be 100% wrong. All right, I hope not, but Definitely look this up yourself. But here we go. So what is reparation? Reparation, or reparative justice, as it is sometimes called, and keep that in mind, reparative justice, because you'll see, at least on the news, you'll see that phrase being used a lot, and people may not connect it to reparations, even though reparative and reparation is derived from the same word. So reparation is a key element of providing justice to victims of serious human rights abuses or atrocities. Reparation programs form part of a transitional justice framework that focuses on acknowledging the needs of victims for redress and seeks to address the consequences as well as the causes of violations in material and symbolic ways. Okay, so another key word to commit to memory is transitional justice. Okay, reparative justice and transitional justice, because you'll hear that a lot, especially we're in election cycle for 2020, and so you're going to hear these terms used by candidates. All right, so make sure you're familiar with it. All right, so what are the different types of reparation? But let me go back real quick. So what can we take from this? So reparation is a part of providing justice to victims. Okay, so we have to understand victims of something, and usually it's of serious human rights abuses or atrocities. All right, so keep that in mind. So what are the types of reparation? And this is where people see, when we hear reparations, most people think of dollar signs, think of money. Many people, that's like the default idea of reparations. You say reparations, most people think money, but that's not true. Okay, so we have to understand that there's different type of reparations, or of type of reparation. All right, so we're gonna read these. So the first one we have is restitution. So what is restitution? Restitution restores the victim, to the degree possible, of course, to the original situation before the violation took place. Okay, examples may include return of property and the restoration of liberty, citizenship, or employment. And of course, it depends on the circumstances. All right, but remember, that's restitution. All right, so that's a type of reparation. Next one, compensation. Now this is where the money, dollar sign and the money comes into play. The compensation or compensatory aspect of reparation. All right, so compensation provides payment for damage that is appropriate and proportional to the harm suffered. Harms that are redressed through compensation often include physical or mental injury, lost opportunities and social benefits, lost earnings, and the cost of medical services. And of course, again, this depends on the circumstance of the violation. Okay, but usually it says physical or mental injury, loss of opportunities and social benefits, lost earnings, and the cost of medical services. All right, so that's compensation. Next, we have rehabilitation. It specifically seeks to mend the harm suffered, usually through medical and psychological care, as well as legal and social services. All right. Satisfaction. It may include a cessation of continued violations and abuses and official recognition of the harm suffered. This may take the form of a search for the whereabouts of the disappeared, obviously, these depends on the situation, of the disappeared, a public apology, commemorations and tributes to victims, memorials, and public disclosure of the truth. Okay, so that's all under satisfaction. All right. Yeah, and I apologize if this is too small for you all to read it, but I'm reading it, and if you read along, you may be able to make it out. And lastly, we have guarantees of non-reoccurrence. While not necessarily technical or legal guarantees, these are practical measures taken to contribute to prevention of future violations and abuses. Examples may include institutional, legislative, economic, and educational reforms. Okay, so all of those are 5 types of reparation. All right, and we have to understand this and keep this all in mind. Now, providing reparation. Reparations may be provided under orders from a court. Okay, now pay attention to this. Reparations may be provided under orders from a court or through legislative or administrative programs. Reparation may be called for in peace agreements, in the recommendations of truth commissions, through advocacy of civil society and victims groups, or as part of government initiatives to provide justice. Depending on the context, reparation may be provided individually or collectively to classes of victims. While they may look similar to development programs, reparation measures differ from development efforts in that they are provided in specific recognition of a victimization or harm suffered. Reparation programs are often most effective when they are based on a consultative process and an understanding of what forms of reparation are most important to victims. All right. Next, we have the responsibility for providing reparation. According to the UN's basic principles on the right to a remedy and reparation for victims of gross violations of international human rights laws and serious violations of international humanitarian law, the party responsible for the violation or abuse is primarily responsible for providing reparation. Should the abuse be directly attributable to the state, then the state is responsible for providing the reparation. In the event the abuse is attributable to a party other than the state, that party has the primary responsibility for providing reparation. Should that party be unable to provide the reparation, the state may be secondarily responsible for providing reparation. This is because the state, even if it was not the cause of the harm, may be deemed responsible for its failure to protect its citizens from these abuses. Okay, and I want to say a side note, that state here is not like the states we know of in the United States. State in this case would be equivalent to countries. Okay, when you're dealing with international issues, you'll see the word state used, and it's not used like how we use it over here in the United States. Okay, so just bear that in mind. All right. And lastly, the common challenges. So here's the common challenges to reparations. All right. Number 1, obtaining political support and adequate funding. Okay, that's a challenge. 2, ensuring fair, comprehensive, and transparent victim identification and participation. Okay, that's a big challenge. Victim identification. 3, fairly addressing the needs of massive numbers of victims and a broad range of violations and abuses. 4, dealing with issues of gender, class, marginalization, and other disparities. All right, these are all challenging. Okay. 5, creating a scheme that adequately and fairly deals with the scope and range of victimization. And then last, relating reparation programs to other transitional justice mechanisms. All right, so these are all common challenges to reparative justice that we call reparation. All right. So what does all this mean? Now, I'm going over this because of, like I said, the talks of late. What's trending is the topic of ADOS. All right. By the way, which stands for American Descendants of Slavery. Now, I know some people will say American Descendants of Slaves, but it's very particular in its wording. American Descendants of Slavery, which is a different nuance than American Descendants of Slaves, because of slavery indicates the institution of slavery here in the United States or here in America. All right. So that's the trending topic right now, and a lot of people are, polarized. It's a polarized topic of different issues, and people are either far to the right or far to the left, and people are at each other's throats about it and going back and forth. And one of the issues that come up in those conversations is reparations. So you have people that will say, pessimistically say, oh, it'll never happen. And they just come out the gate and say, oh, it'll never happen. Reparations never happen. Begging the oppressor and relying on the kindness of the oppressor is a pipe dream. Okay, so, and that's reasonable. That's understood because people have been requesting or asking about or talking about reparations for a long time, at the least 30 years, formally. All right, with HR 40. Okay, and I'm going to actually share that in a second as well, real quick. But so, what can we take from what I've read? Now, we can simplify what I read down to this formula right here. All right. We have X is due Y for Z. All right. Now, that may sound weird, but this is very simple. So X is an entity, and that entity is due Y. Whether it's money, whether it's restitution, all of the things that I mentioned here, the types of restitution, types of reparation, whether it's restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, guarantees of non-reoccurrence, or all of the above, or a combination of any of these. All right. So that's what Y is. And then for Z is the actual violation, or harm, or atrocity, etc. Okay, so when I come back here, it says reparation is usually justice to victims of serious human rights abuses or atrocities. So Z would be the actual violation, whatever it may be. All right, so this is a very simple way to understand reparation. All right, and I try to simplify for everybody because it's a lot to remember with what I just read, but as long as you get the idea. All right. So now, with this in mind, you have to identify X. You can't be vague. You can't be broad or vague and non-specific. X has to be identified very specifically. It's almost like IDing somebody who committed a crime. When they have a lineup, people come in and then somebody who witnessed the crime had to pick somebody out in a lineup or whatever the case is. You have to be very, very specific of this entity that is due whatever the reparation is, whatever type, and then for whatever the violation. Okay, so it's really just that simple. All right, now I want to go back to, where was it? Oh, the common challenges. Now, the number 2, it says ensuring a fair, comprehensive, and transparent victim identification and participation. So with the topic, so now I want to kind of explain the problems people are having and partly why people are arguing so much about the ADOS agenda. All right. And by the way, let me say this. I'm showing this on the screen, and as you can see, Now I'm gonna see if I can make this bigger, because I know you all may be saying that some of the things I was showing was pretty small. So let me make this bigger. All right. So hopefully you all can see that better. Now, like I said, ADOS stands for, it's an acronym. It stands for American Descendants of Slavery. Now, there's two things going on at the same time with that acronym. So you have ADOS, the people themselves who are, they fit that criteria. You know, they are American, which means they are United States citizens, and they are descendants of a victim of the institution of slavery here in America. That's what ADOS stands for. Or that's who an ADOS is. Okay, and I'm speaking about a person or the people. So anybody who is a United States citizen, hence American, and you are a descendant of someone who was a victim of the institution of slavery here in America. So that's who the people are. Now, but then you have ADOS as an agenda or a movement. And this agenda and movement is spearheaded or founded by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. Okay? Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore did not create the people that fit this description, because that's just what you are. No different than either you are a male or a female. Both males and females are humans, but we segment humanity into two genders. We call one gender male, we call one gender female. That's just what you are. That's how you fit into those two categories. So ADOS is a label for an identification. All right. That's on that side. But then you have the movement or the agenda. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because in the arguments that I've been seeing people having, these two things get confused and mixed up. I don't think people are conscious of the difference between these two things. And they're going on at the same time, of course, but we have to be mindful of this, okay? Because you got people who are mad at the name, then you have people who are mad at one of the co-founders. They don't like Yvette, or they don't like Antonio, and therefore, because they don't like them, they don't like the agenda, or they don't like the name for the people, so it gets really, really, really silly in my opinion. All right, but I'm just trying to bring some clarity to it in this video, and hopefully you all can benefit what I'm saying, or I'll be interested in your comments after I'm done. All right, so we also have I have on the screen are the three branches of government, and we learned this in grade school. Okay, so if you have to refresh your memory, by all means, look these things up. So we have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the judicial branch. And so the reason why I'm showing this here is because the ADOS agenda or the movement is not an agenda that is targeting the judicial branch. Okay, the judicial branch are legal remedies handled through the court systems, whether it's the state venue or the federal venue. All right. Legislative deals with political or politics and political. Why? Because legislative branch is the branch of government that makes laws. The judicial branch is the branch of government that enforces and rules on cases dealing with the law. All right, that's the difference between these two. And so ADOS agenda is not targeting this pathway, the judicial pathway. And that's important to understand. Why? Because I've seen people argue in the case of reparation. Okay. I've seen people argue and say that ADOS is a scam. It's not going to work. And then the reason given is that people will say that slavery was legal, which is true. Slavery in this country was legal. It was backed by law. And so the argument or the logic is that because slavery was legal, you can't sue someone for something that was legal. And so this is why it's important to understand that the agenda is not targeting this pathway. So that statement becomes irrelevant. The legality of slavery, if it was legal or not, is irrelevant to the ADOS agenda because it's not seeking this pathway. The ADOS agenda is seeking the legislative route. Okay? Political is dealing with the lawmakers and policy makers. Okay? So understand that. Now I want you to obviously check out their website, which is ados101.com. All right. Now I'm not a spokesperson for them, so let me make that disclaimer. I'm not a spokesperson for them whatsoever. I'm sharing my comprehension of what I read and what you can read. Okay, and from what the founders have explained many times in many of their videos and so on and so forth. All right, it's real clear to me, and so I'm just kind of sharing my clarity to you all in this video, whoever will be watching this video. All right, and hopefully maybe I can help you out with some clarity. So just remember that. So the agenda is targeting the pathway of the legislative branch of government. This is why it's got its eyes solely on presidential candidates and congressmen and so on and so forth. All right. So remember that, not the judicial system. It's not going to be a lawsuit that's filed, and so on. All right. So just remember that. That's why I have this up here. Okay. So hopefully that clears something up, with everybody. So now we can kind of get rid of that argument. It's not going to work because slavery was legal and everything. What you going to do about that? Okay. So now we understand that that's a non-issue. All right. Now, along with this, one of the biggest arguments and fussing that I've seen in these arguments is the ADOS, whether it's the agenda or the designation of people, this what do you call it? This dichotomy between black immigrants and specifically Caribbean people from the Caribbean or Nigeria, because I do note that Yvette and Antonio, when they do talk about other places other than the United States, they do mention the Caribbean and Nigeria a lot, or Nigerians a lot. And so specifically those two trigger, a lot of the back and forth, because it seems like ADOS is against Caribbeans, people from the Caribbeans or people or Nigerians. And then people argue, they expand it. They say it's anti-African. The ADOS movement or agenda, or the co-founders, they're anti-African. They are anti-Caribbean and so on and so forth. And then people are fussing back and forth. But hopefully what I say now will allow people to rest a little bit, relax a little bit. Okay, so remember, what does ADOS stand for? ADOS stands for American Descendants of Slavery. Now, what this does by identifying a group of people like that, what's happening, and I don't have, here it is, the chart here. So what's going on is that we have this global generic concept of black, in regards to people. All right. We use blacks very, very loosely, very generically, very vaguely. And so this is what I have up here: global blacks. Okay, blacks all around the world. All right. And usually this use of the word black is usually based on appearance. Most of it, all of this is pretty much based on appearance up at this level. People who look black, we just say they're black, regardless of where they're from. They could be from India, they could be from Australia, South America, whatever. And we say they're black because they look black. All right, because we're conditioned to see certain phenotypical features or how a person looks and say, okay, you're black. All right. So you have that, and that's very broad. It's very, very vague. Now, remember what I said. What was one of the challenges in reparative justice? One of the challenges is victim identification of a particular atrocity, a specific set of atrocities or atrocity. So this won't work. The vagueness of the general use of blacks will not work. All right. When you deal with the legislative or governments, whether it's the legislative branch or judicial branch, both of these domains require specificity. You have to be very, very definitive and very, very specific. If any of you all have ever had any court experience, whether you've been taken to court or you had any legal experience as a paralegal, or you are a lawyer, then obviously you definitely know what I'm referring to. You have to be very, very specific. And even if you've never had any court experience, if you own a car, if you own a house, or you have created any type of contract, you understand specificity. You understand that you have to be very specific. You have to define your terms. You have to lay everything out crystal clear. You can't have any vagueness in there. Okay. Any contracts that does have vague language, people always get burnt or something always goes wrong, and people learn from that. So anyway, so this won't work. This general use. So what I have here is the next level down, where we can be a little bit more specific. So you have blacks in Africa, you have blacks in America, and then you have blacks elsewhere. The reason why I have elsewhere here is I don't have room to put all the other places where blacks, people who would be considered black, live. Okay, so I just have this as a catch-all. All right, but this is just a little bit more specific. Now, out of the blacks in America, we have to be even more specific. Why? Because when you're dealing with reparative justice, you have to identify the victims of specific atrocities, specific victim or victims of specific atrocities that you're listing or you're naming. Okay, remember this formula. X, which is the victims, specific victims, is due this reparative justice for specific atrocities, which is Z. Remember that formula. So among blacks in America today, we have two different subtypes. We have those American citizens who are descendants of slavery. And then we have those black Americans who are immigrants, who are not descendants of a victim of slavery that took place in America. Of course, we have all kinds of immigrants, but in particular, I'm dealing with blacks in America. Okay. Now, so what's going on is that because a boundary was set for specifically those who descend from the institution of slavery, that now we have arguments. We have people fussing back and forth. Well, what about people from the Caribbean? What about this? What about all of the Africans in the diaspora? What about Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanist and everything? So this is where all of that comes into play, where that part of the conversation comes into play. It's all, muddled up together. Okay, all because a boundary was set of specificity that must be done. It has to be done when you plan to take action or create an agenda to take it through a legislative process or a judicial process. But remember, they're not targeting the judicial process. But if you were, you still have to be just as specific. It's almost like if you were to do something like this through a judicial process, it's almost like a class action lawsuit. Okay, even in a class action lawsuit, you have to identify specifically the parties involved to be the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs can't be vague. It has to be specific, and they have to be a party to the injury or the pain, suffering, or whatever the case is. Okay, and to make it even simpler than that, if it's just as simple as if you, and I used this example before in another video, but it's just as simple as if person A is let's say they go to Walmart and a loose shelf in Walmart falls on them, injuring them. They have to go to the hospital and get treated. Okay, that person can sue Walmart because the shelf was loose and a malfunction or whatever the case is. They can sue Walmart for damages. Now, person B goes to Home Depot and the same thing happens in Home Depot. That person is entitled to sue Home Depot for damages. Now, person A and person B are friends. Now, when person A goes and files a lawsuit against Walmart, they can't include their buddy, person B, in that lawsuit because the person B is not a party to that particular claim, that particular circumstance. Person B is not a victim of that. And likewise, person B can't add person A into their lawsuit at Home Depot. It's just that simple. Okay? So when a boundary is set for American descendants of slavery, people have to ask this question. What is the atrocity being cited? Because the atrocity being cited dictates who the victim is. So Z dictates X, or vice versa. X dictates Z. So what's being cited in the ADOS agenda is a host of things. Now, I want I want everybody to read it. It's their website is ADOS101.com. They lay it out, and it's really clear. It's very specific to a specific group of people. The group of people they are American descendants of slavery. It doesn't include black immigrants. Now, this does not say that slavery did not happen elsewhere, or that blacks from other places did not suffer from slavery or even other atrocities. That may not even be slavery, but so this is not saying none of that stuff happened or that they are not entitled to some form of reparative justice either. It's not saying that. This is just simply saying, this is not saying none of that. This is just simply setting a boundary and identifying a specific group of people for a specific set of atrocities. I can't stress that enough. Okay. And the founders stress this all the time, but people just not getting it. And then the arguments are happening, and then it's causing everybody to be reactionary and react to attacks and defense and attacks and stuff like that. So the conversation is going nowhere. All right. And it's really, really just uncalled for. Okay. So hopefully everybody's watching right now and who'll be watching this video, hopefully you all get that. All right. All this is setting a boundary of identity for a specific claim, justice claim, reparative justice claim. That's what this is about. Reparative justice for a specific set of atrocities. Okay. So now, also now to explain this, to show you how normal this is and why people being upset about this is real silly, I'm going to show you this. Now, it may seem odd that I'm showing you this that deals with what looks like evolution or something like that, but bear with me. Okay. What you're looking on the screen right here is what's called taxonomic rank. All right. And I encourage everyone to study taxonomy, at least the basics of taxonomy and even ontology. Taxonomy and ontology. I say this all the time, so I know I sound like a broken record to some of you all. But I have to keep saying this. Study taxonomy. Why? Because taxonomy is a reality everywhere. We do it and we don't even know that we do it all day, every day, all the time, every time. All right. What taxonomy is the categorization of things. Specifically, taxonomy, most people are used to taxonomy dealing with living organisms, because you have biological taxonomy. That's what most people are familiar with, who's familiar with taxonomy itself. This is why I say ontology also. Ontology is the categorization of existence itself. You know, how do you demarcate and categorize and classify existence itself? That's primarily ontology. Taxonomy, you know, like I said, it usually deals with some more specific entities. You know, in this case, it would be biological entities or whatever. But I want to show this because the principle is a reality everywhere and all the time. So just to explain this real quick, in any classification system, any categorization or classification system, which is what taxonomy is, categorizing and classifying. In all categorizing and classification systems, there is an inherent inclusion and exclusion situation. In other words, in order for anything to fit into a category or not fit into a category, there has to be inclusion and exclusion rules. So, for example, humans. If I say males, in order for humans to fit into the category of males, they have to meet a certain requirement. And if you don't meet that requirement, you are excluded. If you do meet that requirement, you're included. Same thing with females. There's a certain thing that, you know, you're included if you meet a requirement, and you're excluded. This is natural. Now, what I'm showing on the screen is an hierarchy. Okay, this is a hierarchy that exists in these classification systems. Now, I want you to notice that these rows right here represent rank in a hierarchical format. The higher the rank, the more inclusive you are. The lower the rank, the more exclusive you are. In other words, the more detailed you are. The higher the rank, the more vague, the more broad. Okay? The lower the rank, the more narrow, the more definitive, the more exclusive and specific. Okay? So obviously the higher ranks is going to contain a higher number of whatever it is that you're classifying. The lower the rank, you're going to have a lot less. Okay, so this is what you're looking at on the screen. All right. So I'm just going to quickly, go through this here. So here we have the highest rank here is the rank of domain. This particular domain is called Eukarya. And it includes all of these things here: plants, insects, fish, rabbit, cat, fox, jackal, wolf, dog. All of these are considered eukarya. So all these different variety of creatures are in this domain. Now notice when we go down a rank, remember when you're moving down, you're moving to exclude. When you're moving upward, you're moving to include. Inclusion, moving up. Exclusion, moving down. So we're moving down a rank, which means we're going to be excluding. So now we're at the rank of kingdom. This particular kingdom is Animalia. Now Animalia contains the same creatures that the domain had, with an exception. It excluded something. What was that? Plant. Plants are not animals. Plant has its own kingdom. So in the kingdom of Animalia, plants are excluded. All right. This is a natural thing. Going down, we're now at the rank of phylum. This particular phylum is Chordata. Chordata is anything with a backbone, by the way. So moving from the kingdom, Animalia kingdom, we're down at the Chordata phylum. So something got excluded. What was that? Insects. Insects don't have backbones, but everything else listed here does, so it's included. Insects are excluded. Now we're going down to the fourth one. I'm not going to read them all. I just want to do the next one. So we have the rank of class, the class of Mammalia, or mammals. So all of these creatures are mammals. So coming from the phylum of Chordata down to Mammalia, something was excluded. What was that? Fish. Now, by the way, the criteria, remember I said every single category or every single classification branch has an inherent criteria for inclusion and exclusion. So Chordata, the criteria is backbone. You got to have a backbone. I mean, there's other requirements, but I'm just giving one example. Animal, the requirement is that you have to be able to move on your own volition, on your own. That's why plants are not included as animals. Plants cannot move on their own. They move with the wind, but they don't move on their own volition. They're not mobile. All right. Animals are mobile. That's where we get the word animate, to move. Animation, to move. All right. Chordata's backbone. So insects don't have backbone, so they're excluded. Mammalia, the requirement is that you have fur or hair and produce milk. Mammary glands. So fish are excluded. Out of this group of creatures, fish are excluded from that. Okay. And going down, so I'm not going to read them all, but as you can see now, hopefully you get the point. The further down you go, the more exclusion you get, until you get to the very, very single item of Canis lupus familiaris, which is a dog. All right. So this is very simple. So why am I showing this? Okay, I'm showing this is because that's exactly what's going on with the demarcation or the boundary line set up for ADOS. All that is taking place is that you're going down in rank, and when you go down, you're being more specific. Okay, remember that, which means you have to exclude by nature. So now we have two separate things down in this rank. Whereas up here, both of these are merged. Blacks in America. But when you go down into more detail, now you see the separation. But it doesn't mean that you're separate as in you're my enemy or black immigrants are the enemy of ADOS and vice versa. No, it's just the nature. Like, for example, if I go back here, well, I guess this is a bad example because a wolf and dogs will probably fight each other. And so on. So maybe that's not a good example. But the point is that this classification does not automatically set up a dichotomy, where this adversary. So ADOS is not an adversary of black immigrants and vice versa. It's just a rank and a file of identity. specificity. Okay, so that's why I'm showing you all that. It's really just that simple. So if people could wrap their mind around that, I think a lot of the arguments would be eliminated. And if people could wrap their minds around what reparation is, or reparative justice, and why it's necessary to even go through this, why it's necessary to go through this. All right, you have to. Whether you're trying to go through the judicial branch or the legislative branch, you have to be very, very specific. And if you go to the website, you're gonna see that is very, very specific. It keeps saying that specific group of people with specific justice claims for specific atrocities, everything. And what are those atrocities? They list them on the website. Okay. As a matter of fact, what they summarily list all the time is let's see, the institution of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, convict leasing, mass incarceration, and immigration. These are the issues that are addressed in the agenda of ADOS, the agenda. Okay, they call it the Black Agenda. All right, so let's see. Was there anything else that I wanted to kind of hopefully clear up? I guess that's it, because I don't want to make this too long, and I want to keep it short, simple, and sweet. And hopefully I didn't confuse anybody. Hopefully I unconfused people who may have been confused about this issue and have taken things the wrong way, or whatever the case is. Now, like I said, if you understand this, it should eliminate a lot of the arguments, not all of them, because people have their personal feelings and emotional connection and feelings about comments made about Pan-Africanism, whether Pan-Africanism is dead or not, and stuff like that, or whether foreign movie actors are good actors and stuff like that. See, that gets into the realm of subjective and opinionated type of stuff, and I'm not even going to address any of that. All I want to address are the objective things, these things that can be objectively analyzed and discussed. Okay, there's nothing to be mad at if there's a boundary set. If anybody gets mad that a boundary is set around a group of people that are identified by lineage to a descendant of a victim of the institution of slavery here in America, versus those who are not, then it's just as silly as arguing over a group of people being called males and a group of people being called females. If you can get mad at this, then get mad at that as well. Get mad that when you go out in the public and you see a male bathroom and a female bathroom, get mad at that. Okay, I mean that's how silly it is. And I'm trying to put it into simple terms why people shouldn't be mad at that. Nobody gets mad at that. You see a bathroom for men and a bathroom for women. No one fusses about that. Now, side note, the transgender community, they're having a debate about all that kind of stuff. But hopefully y'all get my point though. All right, so anyway, I'm gonna go to see what you all think about anything that I've been saying. So I'm gonna check out these comments and see what you all think. So I am going to scroll back up a bit, and if you missed my just explanation of reparation, listen, you can Google reparation. As a matter of fact, don't just Google and find any random resource. Go to when it comes to legislative and judicial issues, go to the law itself, or go to the agencies responsible. All right, seek that out and do your research and read. Reparations is covered. You can go to the UN website. You can look there. You can go to the United States Justice Department website, I believe, and look there. Okay, they outline it just like how I have it. All right. I got this from an actual uh, legal book on reparations. All right, and I'll post the title if you wanna, if you actually want to get a book and deal with it full fledged. That's fine. That's good too. All right. So let's see. All right, I'm just scrolling up. Let's see. And again, I appreciate anybody taking the time out to hang out. On this Friday. So peace to everybody. I'm not gonna call everybody's name. Um, I see Iguni Yalade Coleman. He said, "Thanks for the clarification. It's my pleasure. Don't even mention it. I'm glad that I clarified whatever I did for you." Kadeem says, "Does it take some kind of conformity to acquire reparation?" Oh. I'm glad you asked that question because you remind me of one other thing I wanted to show. Let me show this right here. Okay, now listen. When you go to the ADOS website, remember it's ADOS101.com. All right, and it's not even that much information there, so it's not like you have to read a whole bunch of stuff, but definitely read it, okay? And listen, try to reserve any opinion and feeling and comments until you read the website. And that's another thing. I've seen people fuss and argue and fight, and they haven't even read the website. I would ask. I've done this over the past few days. I've asked people. I see people comment, and I'll just jump into the comment section and I'll say, have you read the website? And they'll say not yet or no. And I'm like, well, you really don't have any business commenting about it. The agenda and things like that. People just jumping in to fuss. Like really, we have created an environment of fussing. We've created this rap battle type of fussing, debating, arguing, and I can't call it debating. It's just fussing. It's just fuss. So we gotta do better. But anyway, and this is a serious issue. These issues, even if you feel like it will never happen and all that kind of stuff, these are serious issues because it affects the very lives of people. All right. 4 things that have affected lives of people for decades and centuries now. Okay, so these are very serious issues. Now, if you are pessimistic about it, then that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their view and opinion. But what I suggest is that you have an informed opinion. Do your research. Read. If you don't think reparations will ever come to pass, at least have a valid reason for that. Other than, it's the white man, so they're never going to give us something that we're begging for in the first place. All that kind of stuff. That's the easy route out. That's real shallow. That's real shallow to say that. Okay? Do your research and read and find out who, what, where, when, why, and hows to everything. All right. So anyway, if you go to the website, ADOS101.com, you're going to see the Black Agenda. And at the bottom of the Black Agenda, it's going to talk about reparation. But it's going to say, according to the agenda, there's support for a bill called HR 40. All right. And some people who are vaguely familiar with HR 40, I've seen people who think HR 40 is reparations. And it's not. It's not. Okay? And people are making comments as if HR 40 is reparations. And it's not. It never was reparations. Okay? So I'm going to share this HR 40 on the screen. This is HR 40. Now, I apologize for the small type. Maybe I can blow this up. Let's see. Okay, maybe that would be a little better for you all. Now you can look this up. You can look this up on congress.org, and all the many sessions of Congress or whatever. This is the latest. This is 2019. But this is a bill, just to give you a gist of it. This is a bill. This is a bill that was first introduced by Congressman Conyers. Okay, in 1989, I believe it was 1989, or 87. You have to someone may be able to correct me. He first introduced it there, and he's been introducing it every session since, and it has not been passed. Okay, it's not been passed into law or anything of that nature. Okay, and so even this year, it's been represented, represented to the floor of Congress, etc. Okay, and because so it's been 30 years roughly. So because of that, people are pessimistic. They're like, oh man, reparations, oh, that's a pipe dream. Don't even sweat it. Don't even worry about that. Okay, so that's a little bit of where that comes from. Outside of the fact that, okay, asking white people for anything, as if they're gonna give it to us, and what I say to that attitude though, it's a very inconsistent attitude, because that pessimistic attitude, if you're gonna be logically consistent with it, then that means that you shouldn't apply, request, or whatever, anything that has any relation to white people. You know what I'm saying? Like a lawsuit. Like, why do anybody file a lawsuit if it involves anything white on the other side of that lawsuit or whatever? Why apply for a loan from a bank owned by white people and things? You know what I'm saying? If people are gonna have that kind of attitude from the gate, that's a very shallow attitude to have. Whether they're right or wrong, or end up being right or wrong, it's just a the attitude. You be consistent. Like, I don't have a problem with it, but just be consistent with it. I don't expect you to apply for a loan then. Don't apply for a loan. Don't do anything. Don't ask for anything from white people then. Don't even ask for your electricity to stay on if a black person don't own an electric company. How about that? But anyway, what we have here is HR 40, and this first paragraph outlines what it is. So what is the purpose of HR 40? The purpose of HR 40 is to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865. So you see how specific this is? It's not talking about slavery outside of the United States or all over the world, wherever slavery has reared its ugly head. It's talking about slavery, all of the atrocities involving slavery, where? In the United States and the 13 American colonies. And it's specific between the year 1619 and 1865. So HR 40 is also to establish a commission. This is important. And to establish a commission to study and consider a national apology and proposal for reparations for the institution of slavery, its subsequent de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against African Americans, and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, and to make recommendations to Congress on appropriate remedies and for other purposes. This is what HR 40 is. HR 40 is not reparations itself. HR 40 is a bill that's introduced into Congress in order to set up a committee, to commission a committee, a formal congressional committee, to study the impact of slavery and all of the atrocities involved, and to come up with ways and proposals for reparations. So HR 40 is not reparations itself. So if anybody is under that impression, hopefully you can adjust yourself. Okay, adjust your thinking. All right, and then if you hear anybody implying this, make sure you correct them. HR 40 is not reparations itself. It is to set up a congressional committee to do it. In other words, in a more simpler terms, this is a bill to set up a research team, a congressional research team. All right, for lack of other words, to put it another way. That's what this is. And how, and look, listen, I'm going to go to the bottom, the very bottom. And I know it's probably big. But just to show you at the very bottom, this committee is in need of a budget of $12 million to carry out everything. I skipped, as you see, I've been scrolled through the whole thing, but it lays everything out within this document, within HR 40 itself. But I skipped all the way to the bottom because I want you all to see that this committee, to put this committee together, they're asking for $12 million to be set aside for the committee to do their research, to put the committee together, to collect the data and find out. And it's a very difficult thing, because now what would this committee have to do? Now check this out. Outside, stepping outside of the pessimism that reparations will never happen, let's just hypothetically say that HR 40 is passed and a commission is put together, and they do all the research and everything. In their research, they're going to have to find, remember, it says, to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States, they have to identify the victims. And so this is what ADOS is, because the terms used here in the bill is African Americans. And so what has been suggested, which is why the term ADOS has come about and has, expanded, is because there's a need for specificity. There's a need to be specific. American descendants of slavery. Because African Americans, that term has been hijacked a bit when it comes to these issues. Okay, you do have immigrants who some of them self-identify as African Americans. And then African American is used synonymously with black, and black is a generic, broad term. Blacks in America. Because if let's say I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I come over to America, and I walk it down the street, the average, day-to-day conversation, somebody will look at me and say, okay, you're black. He's black. But I wouldn't be of the same heritage or lineage, experience lineage that is, as an ADOS person, a person who is a descendant of slavery, even though both of us would be called black. So there's a need for this specific. There's a need for this boundary, and people are getting upset about that for no reason. Okay, it's not to create competition or anything. It's just a necessary boundary that needs to be set. All right, so I just wanted to point these things out so that hopefully I cleared up some of these things. So now let me just thanks Kadeem for reminding me of that. Now that I've gone over that, so I'm gonna get back to the comments real quick. All right, so let's see. I'm scrolling. Okay, Kim, brother Kim says, especially if one is specifically addressing the legislative branch. Okay, right. All right, I'm scrolling. Okay, he also, can I see the rest of the comment? Okay, yeah. He says, even though whales appear the same as fish, they don't share enough of the same qualities to be in the same category. That's correct. All right, that is correct. He's talking about the chart that I brought up earlier for those who missed it. All right, which has nothing to do. Well, it does. The principle, what I was explaining, does, but whales has nothing to do with what we're talking about itself. Okay, sub levels exactly. Brother Kim says, it's like submitting a grant proposal in alignment with the RFP. You increase the chances of being awarded if your language aligns with the nomenclature of the donor. Exactly. Okay. Savuma Okambei. Okay, question. How do you differentiate on one side slavery and on the other immigrants? I don't get it. The reality in Europe among black is that immigration happens today just as slavery back then. The wounds are real, no doubt about it. Yeah, okay, so that's a good question. And I wanna reiterate and re-emphasize what I said earlier. Notice that this agenda is very specific. This agenda is not an agenda for global atrocities that happen globally. And this agenda is not saying that global atrocities did not occur. It's just simply an agenda for a segment of the global atrocities. The particular segment is what took place in the United States. That should be clear. I don't know how else to say it. Okay? That's it. And the thing about it is this is not something new. Jamaica had is involved with reparations, asking for reparations and whatnot. And they have a justice claim specifically to them, to Jamaicans. And they don't include United States citizens in their claim. They don't include people from other countries in their claim. These are specific, and that's a problem people have. This just happens to be specific. What's wrong with that? Okay, that's it. So I want you to understand that this is a specific claim for the impact of slavery in America. It's specific. It's not to negate what took place in the Caribbeans, because you got to remember the transatlantic slave trade, the kidnapping of human beings from Africa. People were brought straight to America, and some people were brought to the Caribbeans before getting to America, and some people never even made it to America. So you have all of that going on. All right. Nobody denies that. The ADOS agenda does not deny that whatsoever, or any of that. It's just that the agenda is about a specific claim in a specific place to a specific group of people. That's it. No need to get mad at all. Okay? No need to get mad. Okay, Kadeem says ADOS is for the U.S. It's not on stage of the UN conference. No. And as a matter of fact, since you brought up the UN, the UN has addressed reparations for slavery before. They recommended that the United States government forms this committee that's written about in H.R. 40. They actually recommend that the United States pass this bill or pass this or establish a commission for this purpose. Just like what we see in H.R. 40. The UN already recommended that. But guess what? Their recommendations are not binding. The United States are not bound to execute what the UN says in their recommendations. They're not bound to that. So when people say, "Oh, we need to go to the UN," well, guess what? The UN has already made their recommendations about slavery and reparations. Look it up. But it's not binding. All right. So educate yourself on that. All right. Let's see. All right. I guess I'm at the bottom now. Kadeem Stewart. This is a dispute between citizenship. Oh, he's asking, is this a dispute between citizenship? Citizenship is connected to all of this because the A in ADOS stands for American. And American is a term that's the short term for United States citizen. Okay, so obviously people who are not United States citizens, they're excluded from that boundary altogether. And then you have people who have migrated here and became United States citizens who happen to be black or identify themselves as black, and they are also excluded. Why? Because they're not a descendant of the institution of slavery here in America. They may have experience, or they may have a lineage that's going back to the experience of slavery elsewhere, and they're entitled to relief and reparation or whatever the case is. but not in this particular agenda. This particular agenda is very specific, and that's what people have to understand. All right, Sister Lisa says, there are so many variables to identifying someone to fit the criteria. There could be immigrants who have children with ADOS. So would they be eligible for reparations? Now, Lisa, that's a very good question, and that would be part of the study or part of the recommendations and that's what I was going to say. Suppose this comes through. So suppose that they find that reparations need to be given, and they do all the work. They break down. Let me show this back on the screen for those who may have missed it. I'm going to show this back on the screen right here. All right. Now remember, I explained the different types of reparations because for some reasons, when you say reparations, most people think money, and it's not always money. Okay, money would be the compensation type, but you have these other types, and you have combinations and all of the above, or whatever the case is. So let's just say that they rule on reparations, and they find that reparations should be given, and all that. They do all the work. Now, here's where the challenge is, and I already read this. One of the challenges is victim identification. So who are you going to give it to? Who? Like right now, if Congress said that they have $20 trillion for slavery, who would get it? That's a real issue. That's a real issue. That's a real thing that has to be solved. And believe it or not, one of the reasons, not all, of course, one of the reasons why reparations is so loosely talked about, among other issues, among other reasons, but one reason is because of the difficulty it would be for that reason. And so ADOS is helping the process from the gate. So to answer your question, though, it's almost the same as this. When you inherit an estate when a person passes away and dies through a will, and somebody wills an estate to a family and whatnot. Now we know that families, a child of someone will marry someone else who's not obviously blood related, but they're related in marriage and things. And so if the family inherits the estate, then obviously the marriage is binding because it's legal, it's binding. The whole family would inherit it. If it's left to a family, the family would inherit it, and so on and so forth. So these are different I guess challenges that would have to be sorted out and worked out in terms of that. All right. So who have children with ADOS? Okay, I already read that one. Okay, and Kim has a last question. It's probably the last one. Brother Kim says, Pops came from Barbados and Mom is from Halifax, Virginia, and technically ADOS. So I'm assuming I would be an exception. All right. And see, this is the thing. The beauty of it is that it would obviously lean towards, you can't exclude, like if I'm a descendant of the institution of slavery, if I'm an American citizen, see, I am ADOS by name, by the people side. Remember when I showed you all this, you have ADOS, the people itself, and then ADOS, the agenda. And everybody has to, know the difference between the two. So I would be considered ADOS in name. Why? Because I'm an American citizen and I am a descendant of a victim of the institution of slavery that took place in this country of America. Okay. Now, if I marry a a person who's not a United States citizen, or outside of the United States, or whatever the case is, then that my marriage to that person should not forfeit my right to the claim. You understand? If you understand that, then you'll understand. Pretty much you'll clarify your question, or the answer for you. It should not forfeit my right to the claim just because I marry a non-ADOS. If an ADOS marries a person who is not ADOS, it should not forfeit the ADOS person from the claim. In fact, it may even benefit the non-ADOS in those situations. All right. So think about that. But the fine details of that, all of that will have to be worked out in that process. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to address this. I'm not addressing the full black agenda or the full ADOS agenda because they have a lot of bullet points on there. I'm not addressing all of that stuff in this video at all. And again, I'm not a spokesperson for them. I'm not in no capacity, no official capacity or unofficial capacity, am I a spokesperson for them. I'm only sharing my views on my comprehension of what they've been saying, and more so what the website says. I mean, it's written in plain English, black and white. Okay, read it and see what you think about everything. But don't get caught up in the fussing, though. Okay, and that's why I'm doing this video, is to kind of clarify a couple things, to maybe cut down on the back and forth fussing that we see, and these YouTube videos popping up where people are just asking questions and talking about things. And I can tell that a lot of those people have not read, and if they have read, they didn't comprehend. And so, I'm just gonna explain these two things. So, I guess that was it. I don't see any more questions. I'm scrolling last minute. So if you have a question, or you have any comments, or if you think I'm just out of my mind, let me know. Help me out. Help me out. I mean, steer me right. If I'm jumping off the cliff, make sure you grab me. Okay. If you think I'm crazy, and what I'm saying about ADOS, let me know. Say, hey, Wajal, you're out to lunch on this one. But I know I'm not. I mean, and like I said, I'm not their spokesperson. I don't know the sister Yvette. I don't know the brother Antonio. They have personal opinions about various different things. They're entitled to that. But what I do speak about is based on the objective aspect of the agenda, and the need and necessity to set boundaries for identification purposes. But another thing I will address right now is because I saw a couple of people argue about this. For some reason, they think that this is a particular comment or a title of one of Yvette's videos. She says something like as she's speaking about an African country or a group of Africans, or whatever the case is, particular Africans, and she made the statement that if you sold me into slavery, then you're not my family. And I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me on that now. And I'm not quoting her exactly, but to some extent she said, if you sold me into slavery, you're not my family, or you're no family of mine, or something like that. And so people took her saying that and blew it up, poured gas on it, and just ignited a whole inferno about that statement. And they're saying it as if she's saying she's not African, or something like that. And that is very, very silly. The only thing you can take away reasonably, if you have a sound mind, if you just got some scruples, is estrangement or alienation. She's not saying that if that did occur, that she's no longer genetically related to Africans, therefore she's not an African or don't have African roots and so on and so forth. It's the same statement that people do all the time. If somebody in your family goes bananas and does something crazy or atrocious or whatever, you will disown them. But it doesn't mean you're no longer genetically related or blood related. If one of your family members came into your home or another family member's home and, let's say, raped the children, that is a heinous crime that everybody pretty much views as a heinous crime. Okay, with a few exceptions, but most people will say that is crazy. And for that to happen, people may disown that family member, but it doesn't mean that they're not a true genetic family member anymore. It's just a way of expressing that, hey, if you've done this to me, then you're not my family. That's all that's saying. Because if you were my family, you wouldn't do that to me. You know what I'm saying? Same thing. It's just that simple. You know, like I said, I'm not that sister spokesperson, but I wanted to make that comment because that's just ridiculous. Like people are nitpicking at things. You know, they don't know how to comprehend what people mean, like figurative speech and metaphors and stuff like that. You know, they're not saying things, whatever. But anyway, so I will just end here. And again, I appreciate anybody who's tuned in. And if you watch this video, after I'm off and you watch it, if you have any questions for me, you know, my inbox is always open, or comment on the video and I'll see it. But hopefully, you know, you all got something out of this. Make my last round, make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm not missing anything. Hotep Kofi, I see Kofi just popped in. So anyway, that's all I have for tonight, and I appreciate it. Share the video if you listen. If it cleared up something for you, it may clear up something for somebody else. So share this or tag somebody in it or whatever the case is. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. You know me, I'll come out the blue. So I know there's a way that you can get notified if I ever go live. Whatever that way is, do that because I'll go live out the clear blue. All right, I'll just pop out the sky on different things. So anyway, but I'll say Shem Hotep. Hope everybody enjoy the rest of their night and the rest of the weekend. All right, Hotep.